So after talking about the people in, or the peoples in the American continent, we're going to go to Europe now, and we'll see how Europe in the early modern times changed for the better, I would argue, of course, because many individual people came up with excellent ideas in all different kinds of areas. For example, the second on the right is of course Leonardo da Vinci. He's the most known inventor, we could argue. He will invent, for example, the idea of flying, which is a possibility for mankind, by his making drawings of helicopters, for example. I'm going to talk a bit more about Leonardo da Vinci later on. Next to Leonardo da Vinci on the left you have William Shakespeare. He was a famous playwright. You all know William Shakespeare, of course, from the story of Romeo and Juliet. And most of the plays, well, nearly all of the plays, or all of the plays of Shakespeare, deal with human emotions. So the human character, or the human personality, in all its different aspects, good or evil, are very much talked about or showed in the plays of William Shakespeare. Other people, for example, are to the right of Leonardo da Vinci, Queen Elizabeth. She was the first female ruler of England, and of course that's a huge change. So we see that things actually become quite different now. This painting by Jan van Eyck, I'm sorry, there's a typo there, I see, shows Chancellor Rolin. Chancellor Rolin, Kanselier Rolin, was a government official who worked in the duchy, het hertogdom of Burgundy. Flanders was part of this duchy as well, and he was one of the most important political people of his days. So he was living in the 15th century. And he actually asked Jan van Eyck to make a painting, a portrait of himself. And as you can see, he takes quite a humble stand or position towards the Madonna with baby Jesus. And as you can see, the angel who is behind the Madonna is actually is coming with a crown. And this shows that although people will feel like they're more important, after all, this is a painting of Rolin and the Madonna, not just the Madonna, religion will still be quite important in the early modern times. So how is the interior portrayed? As you can see, it is a very luxurious interior, and it also has ancient or Roman architectural features. You can see pillars, and you can see arches. You see beautiful tile work when you look at the floors. If you look outside, so how is the exterior portrayed? It also shows quite a beautiful landscape with a city, a bridge, ships that are coming closer or driving further, we can't really tell, on the river. So we see that this painting is all about putting the human in the painting. This is quite different to most of the medieval art where everything was more about religion. So in Italy we will see that a new movement will start to exist, what people call the Renaissance. So the Italian Renaissance is a rebirth of learning that produces many great works of art and literature. So what does rebirth mean? Well, if you have a look at the sculpture, the David by Michelangelo, which you can see here in the right top corner, you can see that this is a kind of a very classical style of portraying the human body. This of course is more like the Greek portrayal of the perfect or the ideal human form. We discussed this, you might remember, last year when we spoke about Rome's legacy and the Greco-Roman culture. So the rebirth will mean the hergeboorte of the Greco-Roman legacy. And learning means having a new way of looking at things and always looking for improvement, always wanting to make sure that you know more, that you understand things better. Learning betekent dus niet zozeer alleen maar studeren, van in een boekje studeren, maar echt een andere manier van denken. And we will see many great works of art and literature. So this is something with a lot of names in. So why did the Renaissance happen in Italy? We saw this in class, so I think I'm not going to read this out loud anymore. I think this is quite straightforward, so let me move on. I also talked to all of you about the political organization in Italy, namely the presence of city-states. So city-states, of course, are important because it shows that you have many different city-states closely together, and there will be a fierce competition between the city-states in general, but also a fierce competition between the people and the rich families living in the city-states. So who was the most important group within these city-states? Well, they were the merchants. And merchants are people who trade in goods, and especially if you would trade in money, because money is just a good. So if you were a banker, you would be the most important merchant in the city. The family that developed international banking for the first time in Europe is called the Medici. They were a very important family in Florence back in the 15th century, and they will be so important and so economically and politically powerful that some of the Medici people will even marry into royalty and even become Queen of France, for example. So another reason why the Renaissance happened in Italy was because, of course, you have a physical presence there of the Greco-Roman legacy. We also covered this already in class, so I'm going to forward now. The Italian city-states, which you can see here, are mostly located in the north of Italy, and as I mentioned, they are quite close by to one another. You can see that on the right you have an example of the skyline of Florence, and on the bottom you can see a typical feature of Venice. So what was the effect of the Renaissance? Well, we will see a shift in values. In the Middle Ages, values were determined by religion and by religion only. So people would look to the church or look to the Bible to know how they had to behave and what was expected of them in life or in society in general. And now we'll see a shift. We will see a shift towards classical values, which I will deal with first, and with worldly values. Please make sure you really know this slide by heart. This is really an important slide for the exam. So the classics will lead to humanism. Humanism, in het Nederlands humanisme, is an intellectual movement focused on human potential and achievements. Het is dus een intellectuele beweging of een geestesbeweging die zich richt op het menselijk potentieel en realisaties. Ik kom daar nog op terug wat verder in de slide. Humanists studied and read classical texts, history, literature and philosophy, which actually means that they will look into many different topics. So they will not just specialize in something, but they will want to read whatever there is available. Next you have worldly pleasures, de wereldlijke geneugten. Geneugten, wat is dat eigenlijk? Dat zijn de leuke dingen in het leven. Ja? De dingen waar je kan van genieten. The Renaissance society was secular. Secular betekent seculier. Een ander woordje daarvoor, of de betekenis daarvan, is dat je meer belang hecht aan wereldlijke zaken dan aan spirituele zaken. So the word you should fill in here is worldly rather than, so the first one, than spiritually. So how can you enjoy worldly things? Well, just by enjoying fine foods, homes and clothes, which you can see here on this slide. So on the left you can see a young girl with beautiful long hair, and as you can see it is quite a complicated way to do your hair every day. But very rich Renaissance women wore their hair like this. So it would be braided with gemstones and pearls. Next to this you can see how young ladies enjoyed music. So this is the first time that young ladies were allowed on a larger scale to either read, play or sing music. So we see that young ladies, it was not just about looking beautiful, but also about having something to contribute, in this case, knowing how to entertain with music. On the right you can see a young boy. As you can see, children were considered as very valuable and as mini adolescents, or mini adults, als kleinvolwassenen. Just look at the clothes. As you can see from the light which is reflected, this is silk. So silk is the most expensive textile that you can wear. You can also see that something was expected of children. As you can see in his left hand, this little boy holds a little bird. I don't know if you have experience with people at that age when you're babysitting, but as you can imagine, most of the children of this age would be scared of the bird, so they would not keep it in their hands. It will fly away quite rapidly, or they would just, squish it like a squishy toy to hear the noise that the bird makes. So this is something which is more of a metaphor than a real portrait. It shows that children had to learn to take care of animals. So we see that taking care and taking responsibility becomes important in education. On the bottom side, you can see on the left bottom, you can see an interior of a Palladian villa. So this is not a Roman villa with an atrium and so forth. No, this is a Palladian villa, which is very luxurious. As you can see, it has high ceilings, beautiful floors, beautiful decorations, and lots of light. So this is a new way of living in a comfortable house. And then on the right, well, you can see all the other things in life. You can see the beautiful and abundant food which is laid out on the table in the forefront of the painting. If you have a good look in the mirror, you can see how men are sitting together and drinking together. And then with the couple in the forefront, you can see how the little boy is sneaking his way to the table and stealing an apple. And then of course you can see the man and the woman enjoying themselves for a little bit to see, what else they might be doing perhaps later in the evening. So that was to do with classical and worldly values. So who were the people who paid for all these beautiful art and literature? Well, they were the wealthy people who will act as patrons of the arts. Patron betekent niet een patron, niet een baas, maar een beschermheer. Schrijf dus beschermheer bij patron. He was a financial supporter of artists. So we have two sorts of patrons. We have church leaders. So here you can see how, I think this is Pope Julius, who is looking at the map of St. Peter, which you can see just below. Of course, you all know St. Peter, that's the big cathedral in Rome. But they did not only spend money on churches, they also spent money on artworks to beautify cities. So you know how to write beauty. So beautify, B-E-A-U-T-I-F-Y, beautify. Dat betekent mooier maken. As you can see on the left bottom, this is the Trevi fountain. So you know what a fountain is. It just allows you to have access to fresh water. But look at the scale and the beauty of this fountain. If you go to internet, you will see it even better. So this is one of the most, if not the most amazing fountain in Rome. Wealthy merchants were also patrons of the arts. Why is this so important that several generations were inclined to do this? Dat ze geneigd waren om dit te doen. Make a link with the next title, The Renaissance Man or Woman, which I'll come back in a moment. So on the left you can see the David by Donatello. So I want you to remember 4 names of artists. Think about the Ninja Turtles. You have Donatello. He's not mentioned in your textbook, so this is something particular from the PowerPoint. So make sure you know the name Donatello. He's made the David, and as you can see, it's quite a feminine David. Dat is een zeer vrouwelijke David, helemaal anders dan de David van Michelangelo, die ik eerder al toonde en die ik wat verder nog wat meer in detail zal bespreken. So he made this because Cosimo de' Medici ordered him to do this, and he gave him lots of money. So he did this in patronage of Cosimo de' Medici. Dus let altijd goed op de bronvermelding en de uitleg. Als je patronage ziet staan, weet je nu wat dat betekent. Another painting and another artist that you need to know is Botticelli. Botticelli is not part of the Ninja Turtles, okay? This is an extra name that you need to know. I think this is one of the most amazing paintings from the Renaissance. This was also ordered by one of the Medici family members, in this case Pier Francesco de' Medici. Primavera betekent lente, so the spring. And what is so much fun about Renaissance art is that it's mostly about worldly pleasures like love or sex. And it has a lot of metaphors. So the more you look at them and the more you read about them, the better you will understand the paintings. So here you can see the metaphor of spring, of course, is a love. And love can turn quickly into lust. So on the left side you can see the part which illustrates love. You can see 3 young girls having fun, and you can see a boy on the left. This is actually Hermes. You can see, if you have a good look, he has wings on his shoes, and the boy is having quite a respectable way to look at the girls. You might think he's not interested, but he definitely is. Look, his sword is hanging towards the girls, which might be metaphors for something. I leave it up to you to come up with the answer. And he's trying to pick a fruit. So picking a fruit, of course, is a metaphor for the first time you have sex. De eerste keer dat je een seksuele ervaring hebt. And then on the right side you definitely see the lust part. Hier had het meer over lust. And lust, as you can see, was not considered as something very good. Because as you can see, the god which actually grabs the girl is not having this healthy glow on his skin. He's trying to grab her and take her into the woods, of course, to do nasty things to her. So we see here that the lady in the middle, who could be Venus, she is of course the goddess of love. You could also say that she's the goddess of wisdom. She points towards what is a good way of having love. You can also see on top, or above her head, I should say, Cupid, and Cupid is aiming his arrow towards one of the girls who are dancing and not really that interested in the boy, except for one girl. If you have a good look, she's looking at the boy. So this painting actually, one could say that it's up to the girl to actually go to the boy, and the boy should respect the girl and not force himself onto her. So what did people, how should I put this? How did people wanted to develop themselves? How did they want to see themselves? Well, they wanted to see themselves as a person, as a human with many talents. That meant that they had to develop themselves and read into the classics, so learn how to read and write Latin, perhaps some Greek as well. What art was about, which were the famous artists, what were their artworks, or perhaps do some art themselves, especially for girls that was important. They should also know about politics, so who ruled which country, how should you rule a country or a city, but also how to do combat. One of the most read books was by Baldassare Castiglione. He wrote a book called The Courtier, the Hoveling, and this teaches someone how to become a universal person. Dus dit boek toonde aan mensen hoe dat je een goed mens, en niet alleen een goed mens kan worden, maar een alomvattend mens. En het boek geeft zowel richtlijnen aan de meisjes als aan de jongens. En veel van die richtlijnen zijn eigenlijk, heb ik al uitgelegd, bij het schilderij van Botticelli. Dus het is misschien toch wel interessant om dit eventjes te lezen. Het is wel in het oud-Engels, dus het is normaal dat je niet alles begrijpt. Maar ik denk dat je wel woorden begrijpt zoals gentle, zacht zijn, sober, eenvoudig zijn, modest, eenvoudig zijn, comely betekent grappig zijn. Liefde naar vrouwen toe moet eerlijk en goddelijk zijn en niet vleeselijk en sensueel. Het moet meer beheerst worden door reason, ratio, dan door hoesting. Appetite hier is hoesting. En het is beter om de schoonheid van de geest te beminnen dan dat van het lichaam. Dus dat zijn misschien wel wijze woorden zelfs, waar jullie ook oor kunnen naar hebben. Of course for the women, something quite familiar, but we have to be careful now. Okay, when I talk about Renaissance women, please realize that this was only a very limited amount of women. They were upper class, so they were the daughters of the very rich families, and they were expected to inspire art but not create it. Although there will be some amazing female artists, which I'll cover later on. It was okay for them to be a patron of the artist. For example, here you see Isabelle d'Este, and you can see a little extract. Extract betekent een uittreksel, dus een stukje tekst, to Leonardo da Vinci. And she's begging him to please come and see her. And I'm sorry, I already went to the next slide. Please come and see her so he can make a beautiful piece of art for her. He did not like Isabelle d'Este, so he never went to visit her. Here you can see another painting by Andrea Mantegna in patronage of Isabelle d'Este. I'm not going to explain the entire painting now. I want to keep my eye on time. So just look for the word in patronage. I try to explain what patronage means. So the Renaissance will also revolutionize art. De Renaissance zal ook de kunsten baanbrekend gaan veranderen. So the first element is that artistic styles will change. Especially realism will be used. If you have a look at medieval baby Jesuses, I mean, you might get scared when you look at them when it's really dark. They're quite scary babies, these medieval Jesuses. But if you look at baby Jesus painted by Renaissance artists, they kind of look like this very chubby, nice pink babies. You just want to squeeze them in a good way, of course, because they look so lovely, so nice, and so realistic. Painters will also be able to have more realism because they use perspective. Ze gaan dus perspectief gaan gebruiken. Normaal heb je dat uitgelegd gekregen in de lessen PO. Dat is dus een manier om 2 of 3 dimensies op een canvas te geven. Je weet natuurlijk dat dat 3 dimensies zijn. Perhaps a quick quiz. So, which painting is medieval and which one is from the Renaissance? Just look at the top A, of course, is medieval. This is completely lacking perspective. Er zit helemaal geen perspectief in. Just look at the table setting. Kijk eens wat er op het tafeltje staat. It looks like everything is dropping off at the same time. Also, people are sitting down. Are they really? You can't really tell. So B, this of course has perspective. It's not quite perfect yet, but still there is perspective there. We can see a difference between people standing in the forefront and people standing in the background. Also the wall with the diagonal line shows perspective. If you have a look at C, you can again think about the baby that I referred to. This is quite a realistic baby. Also the skin color is quite realistic, so this is Renaissance. And then when you look at D, just look at these 2 people. I think these are the two not coming up with the name back now, but that's okay. So these are, of course, medieval. This is a medieval painting. So realism is really important. So realistic painting and sculpture. We can see realism in details. Looking at eyes, looking at fingers shows a lot of detail in topic, in onderwerp. This is about real people and real bodies, and also in setting. So real places. So not imaginary settings, but actual interiors. So I'm going to focus on different artworks now. First I'll start with sculptures. So sculptures are made by sculptors. Beeldhouwwerken worden gemaakt door beeldhouwers. So what is new? We see a natural posture and expression. Een natuurlijke houding en uitdrukking. Which means that people actually are laughing at you. Ze glimlachen naar jou. And there's only some sculptures from the Middle Ages which show people smiling. Most of them don't have any expression at all. They're just staring at you awkwardly. If I would be doing that right now behind your computer, suddenly my face pops up and I'm looking at you like medieval sculptures. I think you might feel awkward. If I do this more in a natural way, like people made sculptures in the Renaissance, perhaps you would feel a bit more comfortable. I don't know. I'm not going to do that anyhow. So especially one theme that is very interesting to study by 2 artists, namely Donatello and Michelangelo, is the biblical David. He's a favorite subject among sculptures. So the first sculpture that I want to talk to you about is Donatello, who lived at the end of the 14th, beginning of the 15th century. He is so well known, and he's one of the Ninja Turtles, as I already mentioned, because he made the first bronze statue since Roman times. And he will choose the David because this is of quite historical significance for Florence. Het verhaaltje van David, ik weet niet in hoeverre jullie dat kennen uit de Bijbel. Dus David was een Joodse jongen, wiens volk aangevallen werd door een vijandig volk. En een van de meest angstaanjagende aanvallers was Goliath, de reus Goliath. En David, die slechts een jonge jongen was, die is erin geslaagd om Goliath te verslaan, niet door kracht, maar door sluwheid. Okay? Dus dat is het verhaal van David. So as you can see, the head of Goliath is laying at the feet of David. So what is the historical significance for Florence? Florence was a small city-state, and it was surrounded by bigger city, well, not really bigger city-states, but a bigger duchy, like for example the Duchy of Milan, het Hertogdom Milan, or the Papal States, so think about Rome. But just like David could stand up against Goliath and even conquer Goliath, that was the ambition of the people in Florence. Another artist that is important in sculpting is Michelangelo. You can see his full name here, Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni. Just remember Michelangelo. And he is so well known for the statue of David. As you can see, we don't have any head here, but and this is so typical for Michelangelo. We can see a very muscular man. We zien een zeer gespierde man. Daaraan kun je altijd zien of dat het Michelangelo is of een andere kunstenaar. Niemand is zo bezeten geweest met fysieke sterkte als Michelangelo. You can see that he also uses enormous detail. If you just look at the hand, you can actually see the arteries on this very masculine hand. Some people even argue that if you look good enough, you can see where blood was pulsing through the veins. Also you can see that the David is portrayed in the nude, dus hij wordt volledig naakt afgebeeld. That's of course because this is based on Greek ideal human forms, which we studied last year, and perhaps some of you know that Greek people fought nude. And then we'll move on to paintings. So the three artists here are Michelangelo, Da Vinci and Raphael. The painting that you need to remember from Michelangelo is the Creation of Adam, which is part of the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Dit maakt dus deel uit van de Sixtijnse kapel, meer bepaald het plafond ervan. And this is, I think, the most famous part of it. And here you can see at least some more detail of this ceiling in the Sixtine Chapel. And if you have a good look, look at the bare arms, you can see that the people are quite muscular indeed. Je kan echt wel zien aan de blote armen of lichamen dat die gespierdheid hier ook weer terugkomt. There's an amazing movie about the way that Michelangelo was challenged when he has painted this painting. I'm not going to go into detail, so we'll move straight to the next one. Also, the fact that Michelangelo painted a lot of nude in the Sixtine Chapel. So this is the heart of the Roman Catholic Church. This is the place where people gather when they elect a new pope. So this is really the most important place of the Roman Catholic Church. Another painting that Michelangelo painted there is The Last Judgment. Ik geloof dat je dat al gezien hebt in godsdienst. Dus de dag, het laatste oordeel. And here, as you can see, he really used nude quite a lot. So to be nude or not to be nude in a chapel, that's the question. If we move to one of the details here, some of the advisors of the Pope, you don't have to know the name, but one of the advisors or the master of ceremony did not like the fact that there was so much nudity in this chapel. And Michelangelo, he's quite an interesting character to study, actually got his revenge when he painted one of the guys who was sent to hell. This is the face of the man who was not happy about all the nudity and wanted Michelangelo to redo all the nude bodies. So as you can see, the Pope liked it. Michelangelo did not like the fact that this guy actually criticized him, so he has portrayed him for eternity, but he put him right in hell where he belonged according to Michelangelo. I'm not going to go into the details of this one. so you don't have to know that one. So this is Jesus. The only exception regarding nudity was Jesus. So I don't know if you have ever seen a male muscular body like that. I certainly haven't. But again, you can see the fun and also the love of very sporty like this in this one. Okay, so then we have Leonardo. You all know Leonardo da Vinci. I think you can all recognize him. You all know about the painting of the Mona Lisa. This is the sfumato technique. I'm not going to explain the sfumato technique. I don't want to give too much information. And this is the Last Supper, het laatste avondmaal. Both of them show a lot of perspective. If you draw the lines on the Last Supper, for example, they will all meet just above the head of Jesus. So you can see on these paintings by Leonardo, you can see he has a lot of interest in getting to not only realism, but actually understanding how things were, why things were as they were, de manier waarom zijn de dingen zoals ze zijn. And he had a very broad interest. You could actually argue that Leonardo was the homo universalis. Dat hij de universele mens was. Hij was echt in alles geïnteresseerd. Niet alleen in de verhoudingen van het menselijk lichaam en wat de perfecte verhoudingen zijn, maar bijvoorbeeld ook hoe een ongeboren kind in de buik van een vrouw zit. Als je kijkt hier naar die afbeeldingen, dan kan het niet anders dan dat Leonardo echt in het lichaam van een vrouw moet gekeken hebben. Het zal een dode vrouw geweest zijn. En wellicht ook die buik heeft opengesneden. Anders zou hij echt niet kunnen geweten hebben hoe dat kind in die buik lag. En dit zijn de allereerste tekeningen, waarheidsgetrouwe tekeningen toch, van een foetus. Also, he was not only interested in the human body, but also in how it worked. And if we have a look at the details of the arm, for example, and the motion of the arm, or the organs of a woman's body, you can actually see that this is quite accurate. This is al vrij nauwkeurig. These drawings were better than the books students used to become a doctor at university. Unfortunately for the people back then, and especially back then, Leonardo kept most of his findings, well, all of them, regarding the human body secretive. You can see another artist is Raphael Sanzio. So we already have Donatello, Michelangelo, Leonardo, and now we have Raphael. And he is also one of the most important Renaissance painters. His favorite subject was Madonna and Child, but his most famous painting was the School of Athens. Baldassare Castiglione, I already talked about him, was painted by Raphael. And just look at the eyes and the way that you can see the moist, dus het vocht in the eyes. It shows that Raphael really knew how to make details very realistic. So this is a Madonna with Child. Again, look at the baby. Isn't the baby beautiful? Perhaps some of you might look at the little angels at the bottom. Perhaps some of you know these little angels. Raphael is master in painting babies. So this is his most famous painting, the School of Athens. Here again we see classical elements in architecture. So we see pillars, we see arches, but we also meet the philosophers. So lots of these people who you can see here are philosophers. In the middle we have Socrates, who's actually pointing towards the sky. Other philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, who else do we have? Dionysius, En de stelling van Pythagoras die jullie allemaal moeten kennen. Je kan zelfs Pythagoras zien. You can see him in the right bottom corner. He's even holding, I don't know the English word, hij houdt een passer vast. These are some details from the School of Athens. Again, look at the architectural elements, which are classical elements of course. And then here you can see in detail Socrates, who's pointing upstairs, and then next to him you can see Plato, who's holding the important book of ethics in his, or Ethica, in his hand. Now you might think that only men were important in the Renaissance. Of course that's not true. Two female artists that you should know are Sofonisba Anguissola. Just try to remember Anguissola. She was the first woman artist to gain world renown. Dus zij werd wereldberoemd. She was invited to different royal courts to paint portraits of the royals, their families, and people at court. So she earned a lot of money by doing all these portraits. This is a self-portrait. These are two of the portraits, for example, of the Spanish Emperor Philip II, or this is Sophonisba by Anthony van Dyck, which is from the 17th century. So this is her in her old age. Now, one of the female artists which are very interesting and also very important to learn about, and are quite recently only coming into the public eye, is Gentileschi, Artemisia Gentileschi. And she paints strong heroic women. In fact, in London there's an exhibition right now. So here, if you look at the self-portrait, you can see that this is a woman who is very fearsome. Dit is een krachtige vrouw. She's painting herself whilst in action. And as you can see, her sleeves are rolled up. She's focused. She's not looking at the viewer. She's quite into the painting. And I think one of the most moving paintings ever made are the painting of Judith slaying Holofernes. Holofernes, dus dit verhaal speelt zich af in het Oude Testament. En Judith was uitgehuwelijkt aan Holofernes, die eigenlijk haar regio, haar gebied, kwam bezetten. Dus hij behoorde tot een andere stam. En zij was dus uitgehuwelijkt. En na de huwelijksnacht, of tijdens de huwelijksnacht beter gezegd, zal ze, terwijl Holofernes aan het slapen is, samen met een van haar meiden Holofernes in zijn slaap overmeesteren en zijn hoofd afsnijden. And this is a very forceful and awesome painting, because look at the strength that the women need to keep this man down after he has, forced himself upon Judith. And this is actually a topic which often returns in her paintings. As you can see from Judith and the maidservant, so this is just before they will slay the head of Holofernes, or Susanna and the elders. So Susanna was an innocent young girl who went to bathe, and these two old men kind of sneaked up on her to look at her. And of course this was forbidden. And when they were discovered, they said that she invited them, so she seduced them. So why is this such a topic for Gentileschi? Well, she actually was, when she was quite young, I think she was only 15 or 16, she was raped by a painter who worked in her father's workshop. And this is one of the most famous courts reviews, dus rechterlijke rapporten, which we have regarding women's rights during the Renaissance. And the young man actually got fined. But she, of course, had a bad reputation from then onwards, With of course I mean that was logic back then, luckily it isn't anymore. So if you want to know a bit more about gentileschi, please go and see on the internet. And then we have literature. I'm not going to explain literature right now, so I won't ask this on the exam. I will explain it, but I'm not expecting you to study this. Okay, I'll talk about this next term. So let's stop here, and hopefully you've learned a bit about the Renaissance and different sorts of art. We'll keep the literature for next term.